Now I'd like to introduce Aretha Van Herk, our university orator, who will deliver the citation for our honorary degree recipient.
Mr. Andrew Brash, please stand. Eminent Chancellor, Madam President, members of the Senate and Board of Governors, honored guests, fellow faculty, graduands. How does a man reach the summit of the world, not in geographical terms, but in a moral and ethical sense? Andrew Brash is the human answer to that question. He works as a classroom teacher who every day makes a difference in the lives of learning children. But he lives and breathes mountains, has climbed in Tibet, China, Pakistan, Kazakhstan, Alaska, Chile, Nepal, and of course, Canada. He has regarded the world from its thinnest air, its most breathtaking and dangerous aspects. He has reveled in the challenges and trials of mountains and their vertiginous callings. Above all hovers the pinnacle, Mount Everest. The rocky spur of Everest is the highest point on the Earth's surface, 8,850 meters above sea level. Andrew Brash had that apex in sight, was a mere 200 meters away when he and his team stopped to help a man in trouble, a climber who had summited but succumbed to exhaustion and altitude sickness and had been left for dead. Imagine this moment of decision. Here is the peak of Everest, mere steps away on one hand, and on the other, a human being in need of help. Andrew Brash wanted to get that mountain more than anything in the world, but he chose the higher path and stayed with the struggling climber, giving him oxygen and warming him until they could get him down, saving him, but in the process, forfeiting their own chance to get to the top. For this decision, giving up personal aspiration to help another, Andrew Brash exemplifies a model outcome to the schism within us all, the battle of ambition versus altruism, personal achievement versus assisting others. 2 years later, Andrew Brash did make it to the top of Everest, a destination he described as cold and windy. More important, he has gone on to tell the world about meeting that test, about the difficulty of making a good choice out of a hard choice, and how to navigate the wilderness of the mind, the ambitions of the body, and the crucible of conscience. Eminent Chancellor, let us honor and extol this ascendant angel, this inspired and inspiring teacher, this man of integrity and grit, of spirit and sacrifice, who examples to all outstanding character and values. On behalf of the Senate and the university, I invite you to invest Andrew Brash with the degree Doctor of Laws honoris causa.
That's great. I admit you, Andrew Brash, to the degree Doctor of Laws honoris causa and grant you all the rights and privileges, powers and responsibilities pertaining to this degree. Congratulations.
Good morning, everybody. I have a speech, but I'm not sure if I need one now, after all that. Thank you so much. That was a slight exaggeration. You probably understand that. Thanks. It's really amazing to be here. It's wonderful to be here. It's an amazing honor. I really appreciate it. Chancellor Thirsk, President Cannon, members of the Senate, faculty and staff, family. I know lots of you have family in the audience today. I have my mom and dad today here, my 3 daughters, Anna, Jamie, and Lexi, and to all our friends, some of whom have traveled a long way to be here, and I know we all appreciate that so much. And of course, most importantly to you, the graduates of 2017. It's truly my pleasure to have the chance to say a few words to you, including my most major and deep congratulations on having just completed your degree. It's a wonderful feeling, isn't it? Yes, it's one of the best, I think. I hope you're truly able to bask in the feeling today and for a good long time to come, because all of you have just achieved a big goal you've set for yourselves, and for that you should feel very proud. The reason I've been asked to come and speak to you today, I think you've just heard about that, my involvement in the sport of climbing, and in particular expedition climbing. I have found a lot of satisfaction, I have to tell you, in my life for following through on what I started out to do, which was to become a climber. And then eventually, after climbing for quite a long time, maybe 20 years or so, I decided I should get a real job, and I went back to the U of C here and got an education degree, which is a profession I know I share with many of in the room right now. So congratulations to all the teachers in the room. And oh yeah, also congratulations to the environmental design people as well. So yeah, I came back here and did a Bachelor of Education, and then I was lucky enough to eventually get hired by the Calgary Board of Education. You know, a lot of people think that climbing a mountain is hard. The cold, the thin air, the steep, unforgiving terrain. And then I started teaching junior high. I have a feeling some of you may have already experienced that particular activity, and for some of you, the pleasure still awaits. You'll have fun with that in your new job. After 1 year in the job, I felt I needed a break. So I thought it was a great time to go for one of my lifelong goals, which is to climb Mount Everest. So after some tricky organizing, I managed to get a leave of absence from the Calgary Board of Education, and I headed to Tibet, where I spent 2 exhilarating months trying to climb that mountain. In late May, after one previous attempt on the summit earlier in the month, my teammates and I arrived at Camp 3 on Everest North Side, ready for a summit bid. As we arrived in camp, we encountered another team returning from the summit, who informed us they'd lost 2 team members. With that disturbing news, we began to prepare for the night's climb ahead. At midnight, we set out for the summit. I know, it's a disturbing story. We set out for the summit, climbing in the pitch dark and in the unbelievably thin and cold air. Eventually, the light of the new day began to emerge. Climbed through the night, it started to get light. I don't know if you've ever experienced that before. You might tonight, if you're up late enough. The next day comes around, and we could finally see where we were, and it was spectacular. Ahead, I could see the summit of Everest, and it really didn't look very far away. I couldn't believe it. We were almost there. I thought to myself, my God, we're going to summit Mount Everest today. Not 5 minutes after this thought, we could see some brightly colored fabric flapping in the wind ahead. We assumed it would be one of the climbers who had not made it. As we grew closer, we realized this was a living person, but could see that he was in horrendous condition and looked to be near death. And yet, when we arrived to him, he managed to say quite clearly, "I imagine you're surprised to see me here." Just like that. My teammates, Jangbu Sherpa, Dan Mazur, Miles Osborne, and I were all astonished. This person's gloves were off. His fingers were clearly frozen solid white. He'd taken off his down suit to the waist, had no oxygen mask, and had no backpack with him. He was a mystery. We asked him a couple questions like, how did you get here? Which he didn't know the answer to. And what's your name? He said, Lincoln, from the Blue Mountains in Australia. It turns out Lincoln was one of the climbers who had been pronounced dead the day before, but he was very much alive, and he clearly needed help. We had to decide what to do. The goal we had in place was suddenly being challenged in the most urgent way. All of those plans we had made, all the emotional investment, all that time, all those hopes and dreams, they were going to be gone. Our goal that we'd worked so long for was only a couple hours above us, but we had to stop. There was really no decision to be made. We called his Russian-led team on the radio and told them we had Lincoln with us and that he was alive. They told us we must be mistaken, since Lincoln Hall had died the previous day, and they had instructed his teammates to place rocks over his body. And the expedition had called Lincoln's wife and told her he was dead. So it couldn't be him. It took some time to convince his team that Lincoln was still alive, but they soon sprang to action and were sending up everyone they had to help. Not knowing whether Lincoln would live or die, we sat with him for approximately 5 hours, at 28,200 feet with temperatures in the -20s, offering him things to drink, getting him dressed again, and giving him oxygen, wondering all the while how we could possibly get him back down the complicated terrain below us. The sun eventually rose over the horizon, warming us considerably. The conversation, but most importantly, the oxygen mask we had given Lincoln, seemed to help him a great deal. With increasing optimism, I can remember saying to Miles, boy, I hope this guy survives. And Lincoln, who was sitting in the snow beside us, lifted up his oxygen mask and said, yeah, so do I. So Lincoln was regaining strength. He regained the strength to stand. Shortly thereafter, his Sherpas arrived, and we just all started to go down the mountain. It was during the descent that it really sunk in that our long-dreamed-of summit wasn't going to happen. Lincoln traveled under his own power and arrived at Camp 1 that evening with an increasing army of helpers joining along the way. Lincoln made it off of Everest in one living piece. He called his wife to assure her he was still alive, mentioning that he hoped she hadn't found a new husband yet. My team and I were invited to eat at Lincoln's camp for the remaining few days of the trip, where we made great new friends and drank Russian white wine, which was actually vodka. Those were days I will never forget. It was an incredible time. Lincoln was put on a yak, and the poor guy had to ride 24 kilometers back to base camp, and then on by road to Kathmandu to the medical care he urgently needed. Watching him leave, I just said to myself, oh well, and figured I'd probably never see him again. About a week later, my friend Dan and I were sitting in the courtyard of the Kathmandu guest house, licking our wounds and drinking coffee. We had no idea what had become of Lincoln. Then a gangly, bearded, and bandaged person walked up to our table, and we had our answer. It was Lincoln, and he had come looking for Dan and I. He had come to thank us for giving up our summit for him. I felt two things. One, an incredible happiness to see him, but also a bit of a sense of shame due to my continued focus on not reaching the top of the mountain. It dawned on me how incredibly unimportant that was. What became so clear was that it was much more important to help another person when they needed us. It was just a mountain after all. Although all of us felt some considerable disappointment in not reaching the summit, I could tell you none of us have ever regretted our decision. Those moments have changed my life forever. I can say to you with a lot of certainty that you will never regret helping someone else when they need you. In the months that followed our time up on Everest, Lincoln and I became very close friends and would spend hours on the phone while he sat in hospital recovering from his extreme frostbite. I think he got very bored. He would just phone me and we would talk for a very long time. And so as a result, he eventually paid me a visit here in Calgary. We had an incredible time together. And the plan was always for me to go back to see him in Australia and pay him a visit there. Very tragically, Lincoln was diagnosed with mesothelioma in 2012, and that's an asbestos-related cancer, and it took him very quickly. After all we went through together and everything he had to do to survive, his loss seemed especially cruel, and it caused me to feel a pain that is hard to describe. So I would say, never put off the things you want to do. You just don't know what's around the corner. There is no better time to do those things than now. So, where does this all lead us? It seems to me that we have entered into a sort of dark age at the moment. There are so many negative, heart-wrenching stories in the world coming at us constantly. There seems to be so much anger. We see world leaders whose actions leave many of us baffled and feeling in despair. And we continue to see intolerance all around us. At this time, it seems more important than ever for us to hang on dearly to our values of compassion and acceptance and even appreciation of others. I think it is more important than ever that we are good to one another. When we see someone different from us, we should offer them a smile, not a scowl. We should support each other and value each other as fellow citizens and human beings. And if you happen to be driving home after this, let someone merge in front of you in traffic. And give them a wave as someone does the same for you. And please make sure to use your turn signals. We all appreciate that. Well, I know many of you graduating today have chosen to pursue careers that hold all of those values dear. And for that, you have my admiration and respect. So to everyone in this room today, I would like to wish each and every one of you the very best. Thank you and congratulations, class of 2017.
Thank you, Dr. Brash, for accepting this honorary degree. It's actually a great honor for us, the University of Calgary, to confer it. You are a role model as being a values-oriented person, someone who aligns your actions with principles. And you're an inspiration to our graduands as a lifelong learner, a teacher, and a courteous driver. Congratulations.